Good morning, everyone. This is Bobby here, KM6IKH at the NEX-GEN Labs. I see the last time I did a little soldering tutorial, which was very basic. You guys liked it, so I figured I'd go another step. So basically, start with the basics of all the basics, which is a good, should have a commercial grade soldering iron. It'll set you back about $150, but going to give you a lot of joy in soldering, where you can control your solder tip temperature. It's extraordinarily important to be able to do that in soldering. How I always prepare my tips, I have one of these brushes, as you can see, a well-worn brush, pretty well worn out, but it's still working quite well. And I do one of these, my tip. Get this in any auto parts store, by the way. And it gives me a nice clean tip. By the way, I don't clean my tips just for the videos. My tips are always this clean, minimum. It's very important for the soldering process. Secondly, this little steel wool, you can get these on eBay, and a few pokes in here, and it just kind of finishes the finishing process of preparing your tip. That's step 1. Step 2 is flux. You take your tip. Now this, I'm just showing you for demonstration, this iron is not on, but you can get this for a couple $, and it's kind of consistency of cold honey, I guess I would say. It looks a little like honey. Extremely toxic though. Make sure that you ventilate very, very well whenever you use this stuff. It makes a lot of smoke, but you dip this in once. I usually dip it in twice, and that will prepare your tip for accepting solder. So that's my electrical flux. By the way, make sure you use electrical flux. Do not ever use the flux as you would use on copper tubing for example, for putting water plumbing in your house. It will corrode your electrical circuits and boards, and actually can even take the traces right off the board. So electrical flux, electrical only, must be electrical flux. And here's some basic tip tinner, also specifically for tinning the tip for electrical. And when this tip is hot, you just dip it in there. This is very solidified. It's kind of like, looks like a rock. It comes in powder form. It gets this way over time, but I found it's kind of nice because once it hardens up, you just take the tip, dip it in a few times, and then you'll have a little bit of a mess on there, and you'll simply take this steel wool, I call it steel wool, especially for soldering. Pick these up on eBay, Amazon, and just dip it in like that. Usually 2 or 3 stabs will clean it up, clean your tip quite nicely. And then after you've done that, so you've cleaned with the wire brush, you've cleaned with the I'm going to call it steel wool. It's not exactly steel wool, but we'll call it that for the time being. I forget the exact name of it, but anyways, you'll clean with this. It's made especially for soldering. The flux, the tip tinner. Reintroduce this to the tip cleaner. You will then have a perfectly tinned tip. And then before you start soldering, you will apply to the board, in most cases, and you want to use no clean flux. I use the Kester 186, it works quite well. You'll want to make sure you apply a little bit of this. It has kind of a needle on the top. Can be a little messy, be quite careful with it. And the good old flux pen. Also, I use the 951 Kester, and you want to make sure that it's low solids is best, no clean. In other words, you don't have to clean this off after you use it. It will not short out your circuitry, and it will not corrode your board. Very important. And last, and certainly not least, selecting the correct solder for your application. I have some 0.31 here, which I use for most of my through holes, and I have a 0.8 or 1 millimeter for, matter of fact, for doing the antenna studs, for example. In the MMDVM boards, this works a little better. Typical temperature for this type of solder is, in this particular brand, the solder and the specifications is about 270 Celsius, and I can go up to 350 with this. I don't like going past 350 on any circuit boards. Personally, I find it unnecessary. So that's it. This is Bobby here, KM6IKH from the NEX-GEN Labs, and that's just a little introduction of how to solder with precision. Again, KM6IKH at the NEX-GEN Labs, 73, and you folks have a wonderful day out there.